Hello again, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our painting now. On part 1, we, as a recap, went and kind of completed the sky, our little cloud, and some of this background tree work right here. And today, as we continue, I want to work on this area right here of this group of trees. Now, before I get into that, I've been looking at my reference photo, and I've been looking at some of the trees, especially the sunlit portion of these trees here, and I just feel like it's a little bit too yellow. I'd like to kind of get it to go a little bit more on the green side. So what I'm going to do before we jump into this part of the painting is I'd just like to go and create a quick glaze. And I'd like to cover this with the glaze. What I'm going to use is I'm going to use a little bit of Liquid Original, and I'm just going to mix up a nice green color here, and we're going to go ahead and just glaze this little portion here so that it kind of mirrors more the photograph that I'm using as my reference. So going to jump into that, and then after we do that, we're going to go ahead and continue with our trees. So again, thank you so much for tuning into my YouTube tutorial today, and if you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, and happy to hear your comments. And with that, let's go ahead and jump on into starting this painting. Okay, so I've set up my palette here, and this is the palette. I might add a couple more colors, but we've got titanium white, ivory black, that's Prussian blue, that's phthalo green. There's a little, it's kind of a yellow shade phthalo green, and that's Winsor lemon. And I mentioned that we're going to go ahead and work at glazing, so I'm going to go ahead and shake up my bottle of Liquid Original from Winsor Newton. I don't need a lot. Matter of fact, I need a very little amount. So I'm just going to take just a tiny little dab, just like that. This stuff really goes a long way, so you don't need a lot. These types of bottles should last quite a long time. So I'm just using this fan brush. This is a number 4 fan, pretty soft little brush, and I'm just going to go into this liquid here, kind of create a little pile of this, and I'm going to go into a little bit of that phthalo green. That's a nice looking green. You want to keep it pretty transparent, obviously. I'm going to add maybe just a little bit of Winsor yellow to that. And this is what we're going to use to kind of start applying on our tree. So let's go ahead and get into that. Now, per the photo, there's quite a strong kind of sunlit section right here at the bottom. But kind of up in this region here, it's going to be a little less yellow. So I just want to come through here and very gently just change the coloration slightly. Now I'm using my Griffin Alkyds oil paints. These are very fast drying. Typically after a day of use, by the next day they're pretty well dry. Obviously they usually need at least a good 3 to 4 weeks to completely cure, but they dry quick, and even after half a day, they're pretty dry already, and you can really go back and kind of rework them a little bit. as I said, just using a little of this. Keep it really transparent so that it's really just glazing over this. Yeah, so that's kind of all I really wanted to do there. I might just grab a little bit more of that, kind of right in this section here. And that's the great thing about glazes is if you don't like a certain tone, if you don't like a certain value, you can use these glazes really effectively to get kind of where you want it to be. So, all right, so I kind of like that a little bit more. I think it's more closely mirroring our distant trees from the photograph here. So, yeah, we'll stop there. And now I feel like I can kind of move more into this other region over here. So we're going to start working this group of trees right here. This is going to be closer to the foreground. And again, for those who've missed my first episode of starting this painting, I did complete the underpainting all in acrylic, and I'm going back over now with oil. So this is all acrylic. This is all nice and dry now, and now I can I've switched to my oil palette, of course. So now we're going to go ahead and start working in oil. So what we're going to use, I've got this Rosemary and Company tree and texture brush, really great brush. It's got these fine natural hair bristles. It's I'm trying to kind of fan it out a little bit. You want to have those nice spiky ends to it, kind of rough it up a little bit like that. What we're going to do is I'm going to go into my liquid here. I'm just going to take a little bit from that I've put on my palette. I'm going to go into a little bit of that midnight or that ivory black. All right, so I want this to be fairly transparent still, but I need to come through here and I need to start creating a little stippling effect. And that's all that there is to it. Come through here and kind of dot this on. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video now, and you'll just observe me going through here and adding these nice stippling effects. I'll block this in, and I will mention, obviously this technique a little different from how we traditionally learn about doing trees. Usually we really talk about going from dark to light when we paint most things, including trees. In this situation though, I'm kind of going from mid-color back to dark, and then at the end bringing in highlights. So that's kind of what you're seeing me do, why I have sort of those mid-tones blocked in acrylic, and then bringing in some of those blues and greens that we've stippled on. So a lot of that acrylic underpainting is coming through, and because we're using liquid as our medium, it's very transparent. So a lot of that color from the underpainting will come through, and that's kind of the theory behind that. Now, when you get to this point here, and the great thing about liquid is it dries fast, so you don't have to really wait too long to start to put the highlights on top of this. But when you get to this point, you've stippled on your effects, you want to go back to your reference photo and look at some of the dark pockets. And so I'm looking at my reference here, and when I see the dark pockets, and I'm just going to kind of go in here again into my ivory black, there's some really deep dark pockets, specifically kind of in the middle or at the bottom here. And I'm just going to kind of block that in a little darker, because these pockets, you know, these are the deepest shadows, and some of the, which is getting kind of tucked way deep into the foliage here. So I'm looking at my reference photo, I'm saying, okay, I kind of see some deep pockets at the bottom. So this is a good time to bring those, to kind of bring those in. Got a little bit more kind of right here. This is a good way to kind of separate some of your trees out as well, although this is kind of a whole grouping of trees. I see some deep pockets kind of right here. And so I'm not by any means stippling this on. I'm just using the tree and texture brush, but I'm kind of swiping downward. So it's a little bit more of a mass and not so much that broken up stippling. We've got a nice big pocket about right here. By the way, I'm using an MDF board. I bought this MDF board from Lowe's, and I had him trim it down for me, and then I put a granite gray indoor high endurance interior acrylic paint that you would use for your walls in a house, because doing that, it protects it. It's got the antimicrobial agent on it that kind of protects it, because wood is not the best surface. At times it's susceptible to molds and mildews, so it's good to protect that. All right, so that is pretty much the deep pockets I'm seeing. Now, at this stage too, when you add your pockets, you also want to go ahead and add any limbs and twigs and branches, if there are any. So I'm going to find myself a nice rigger brush. So it's a good rigger brush right here. And I'm going to go into my paint thinner, and I'm going to thin out some of this ivory black. Okay. And this is a good time to go ahead and first add the branches. You see, I see some branches now that are kind of coming out like that. Okay. So bring those branches, if you see any, get those in here. This is the time you want to do that before you add anything else. Now from this point on, I'm going to grab a small, I think maybe this is a, what is this? This is a number 0 brush, little cheap one I have, but should do the trick pretty nicely, I think. Before we start adding a lot of the highlight, we want to come through this tree line right here. Now, as I mentioned in my last episode, we're going to have a big overhanging tree that's really close up, and it's kind of coming out from the sky a little bit. So that'll cover up some of this, but you still want to come through here, through this exterior part on the tree line, and kind of bring it out too. And so I'm going to mix up some of our phthalo yellow green, a little Winsor lemon, a little white, it's going to be a little bit more on the lemony side because this is going to be hitting pretty directly in the sun. But what I need to do now is come through here and start kind of bringing out some of the individual branches or individual foliage. Okay, now that we've established kind of the exterior part of this tree here, where there's quite a lot of sun filtering kind of between the canopies here, between this tree line and this kind of front tree. So I wanted to make sure that we got some of these leaves that are sort of breaking from the tree line and into the sky region. You want to make sure that it's very irregular, a lot of different, just different shapes that kind of keeps it a little more real. So anyway, now we're kind of ready to go ahead and start working the interior of this tree, and I think I'm going to continue to use this brush to do that. So there's a number of brushes you can use for this, but we are going to be dotting on these highlights. And matter of fact, we're not even going to start at the brightest. What I'm going to do is we are going to use kind of a mid-tone, and I'm just going to dot this on. And right now you can't really see that too well, so I'm going to bring a little more white into that. And so now we're just going to come through here, and I'm going to just dot this on. It's going to take quite a while. You want to be patient. I will speed up the video, but that's kind of what we're going to do, is we're just going to use a good bit of paint and just give it a nice kind of dotting. And think about shape as you do this and create clumps. Trees typically seem to grow in kind of bushy clumps. So I'll just kind of jump around here and dot this on. So from this point on, we'll just speed up the camera. Alright, so I'm fairly pleased with what we've done here. It certainly does take a lot of time to do it that way, but with this you have a lot more control, I think, than using larger brushes. And you know, as this is drawing closer, you kind of want to have a little bit of a larger brush stroke anyway, to kind of give it that illusion that it's a little closer. So a bit larger brush maybe might do the trick. Anyway, that's kind of how I would put something like that together. On our next time that we meet, on part 3 of this video, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to work kind of this little distant field. It's going to be quite sunlit. So we'll probably end up mixing some pretty bright yellow cream colors for that. And then we're going to want to probably move into this little lake right here as well. So that's what we'll have to look forward to. Thanks for watching this segment. I hope that was beneficial on how I would put something like that together. And I ask that you please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I appreciate your comments. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and close this out until next time. Thanks a lot.